All right, another team in Texas. It's year 2 for Joey McGuire at Texas Tech. Not quite as successful year 1 as TCU had with Sonny Dykes, but for Texas Tech terms, it was 7-5 in the regular season, 5-4 in the Big 12, and a win over Ole Miss in the Texas Bowl. A really solid first year for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Texas in year 1. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Oklahoma 51-48 in overtime. They beat Texas also in overtime. And a move that I think, Joey McGuire didn't get the kind of notoriety of some of the other head coaches, but I think a lot of insiders close to Texas, especially the state, really like that hire for Texas Tech. The over-under for FanDuel 7.5. We'll get to the schedule here a little later. Lucas, you have Tyler Show back, 8-1 as a starter at Texas Tech. They return a lot at wide receiver. They return their leading rusher. You got to get better on defense, like we'll say for basically 13 of the 14 teams until we get to Iowa State, essentially. What are your? I mean, literally, it's like
It
Iowa
pretty much
State's
is,
like,
yeah.
look at the rankings. Like, I'll just give you Texas Tech's defensive rankings: 93rd in scoring, 103rd in passing, 91st in rushing, and 108th total. Like, every team is going to be there. So, what are your thoughts on Texas Tech?
Kind of like you said, I think offensively this is going to be a really, really fun team to watch. You mentioned Tyler Shuck coming back. He comes in this year as the full-time starter. Last year they split time with 3 different guys. Baron Morton, who started 4 games last year, does come back as the backup. And 8 of their top 9 wide receivers are back, including Jaron Bradley and Xavier White. So this could be, Phil Steele actually had them ranked as the number 1 wide receiving group in the Big 12. Which, if you're the number 1...
Really? Over Texas? Wow.
Yes. He had them number 1 for the wide receiver group. And if that is the case in the Big 12, that means you're going to be one of the best wide receiving units in the country. Their offensive line has a combined 147 starts between all of them. So they should be very, very good on that side of the ball. And you mentioned defensively, look, kind of like some of these teams, kind of similar to Oklahoma. They can improve. They can be a top 60, a top 70 defense where they're maybe just average or even slightly below average. They can do some work. Now they got to replace Tyree Wilson, who was a first-round draft pick, All-American defensive end. He is gone. However, he's the only starter on the defensive line that's there. Still got guys like Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford, who both were on all Big 12 teams last season. And so to me, the offense should be explosive. And, we'll get to the schedule. I think the schedule outside of that non-conference game against Oregon, I think could be very, very favorable for them as well.
Yeah, let's get to it right now. The over-under at FanDuel is 7.5. The over is plus 118. The under minus 144. For Texas Tech in the non-conference, they'll get Oregon and Tarleton State at home. They'll go at Wyoming. They'll have 4 Big 12 home games. They'll get Houston, Kansas State, TCU, UCF at home on the road. West Virginia, Baylor, BYU, Kansas, and Texas. Lucas, 7.5 wins. Could it be another 8-win season for Joey McGuire? What do you think?
I'm going to say yes. So now 4 or 5 overs.
4 out of 5. Okay.
We'll get to the end. I think the bottom of the Big 12 might be really, really bad. So I think that helps a lot of these teams. But I just think you look at the schedule. I think this offense is going to be really, really fun to watch. I think the defense does improve just enough to kind of keep them in games where maybe they're not getting as many 40-point shootouts, but they have the offense to keep up with just about arguably anybody, I think, not just in the Big 12, but maybe in the country. And I think they get a look at the draw. They get no Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. And they also draw 3 out of the new 4 teams that are in the league that are going to be making the transition from Group of 5 to Power 5, and they get 2 of those teams at home. So I think the schedule's very, very favorable for them. So I'm going to say once again, kind of like Kansas State, I think 8-4 is probably the ceiling. They were 7-5 in the regular season last year. I do not see why they cannot do better than that this season, especially with the way the schedule shakes out.
Yeah, I am. God, I put under on my sheet. Now I'm kind of questioning it. You honestly made a lot of really good points. I also look at the schedule. I think we'll get to. I'm a little higher on Kansas and Baylor. I think,
Hmm.
and you're at Baylor, you're at Kansas, you're at Texas. You get Kansas State at home. You're going to play West Virginia early, September 23rd, when they might still be like invested in the season. I would rather
True.
get West Virginia in November or October when Neil Brown might not be there anymore. I worry about the defense. 108th last year in total defense. You lose Tyree Wilson. You lose your leading tackler, Krishan Mayweather. And you lose Marquise Waters, who had 13 tackles for loss last year. I'm going to go under, and I think we'll get to. I was almost afraid I had too many unders, to be honest. I think they lose at Oregon. Or I'm sorry, I think they lose against Oregon at Wyoming. Up on the plains, you never know. They open at Wyoming. I think the early slate is favorable. West Virginia week 4, Houston week 5, Baylor week 6. Closing at Kansas, home UCF at Texas. I think is going to be tricky. So I'm going to take under. I just think 7-5 is more likely than 8-4, but it's close for me. So